Next up, we have a note from one of RBN's early day supporters. Let's welcome Hian Goh from the RI class of 1990, co-founder and general partner of Open Space Ventures, host of the Unreasonable podcast, serious pizza maker with a strong following on Instagram at Hian Can Cook. Let's give a round of applause to welcome Hian.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I was given a few talking points. I have erased all of them. They seem to have all been done. So I don't have much to say, except for a couple of observations from tonight. So first and foremost, it turns out that I walk around, and I don't know whether many of you guys have seen this, is that people go, oh, you're from RI? And I've actually met these people before in the wild. And we only uncloak ourselves. Tell me if I disagree. So I was just thinking, why is that the case? Is it because Raflesians somehow are understated human beings? Or is it that we run an emulation layer to pretend that we're from another school? But the reality is that we're one community, and the second sense I felt was a general shared camaraderie. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a long-term DNA of being a Raflesian. There's a certain common language. I feel very comfortable here. So the first thing is that if we're going to be successful, it has to be a community. And one of my concerns that I voiced out to Vincent, very frankly, was that how do we compete, right? If this is a Raffles business network, all of you have got your own relevant business networks, right? So the venture capitalists have got the venture capitalist thing, and the finance people. Like, why do we need yet another networking thing, right? Everybody's so busy. And I'm very reassured to say that I like it, and I would certainly come back again, because this is definitely different than the usual industry sort of, hello, hi, my name is Hian. You know, it's a very different feeling. But to keep this feeling together, we have to continue to invest. So I made the decision that I would try and support this endeavor as early as possible. So I lent out my office, and I cooked pizzas, and they filmed it, and clearly I'm well known on LinkedIn for that now, for probably the wrong reasons. But I would encourage, if you've got any unique skills or any unique spaces or any unique ideas, to reach out to the folks here and contribute. And that's very important for me, because this will be the last time I ever be on LinkedIn. I'm overexposed already. Like, you can pick on other people, unless if it's just always me, it doesn't feel right to me. Absolutely, I'm being very serious about it. I'm looking at it again, So we have to have more people, and I don't want to start pointing out, but they are really fabulous human beings. Like King Len, where are you? Yeah. There's also another one person. I see Dawn there, right? These are all people we know, so certainly we can always contribute. So that's my takeaway so far. Last but not least, I want to say just a very quick thing about tonight's event, because I'm supposed to introduce Ben and the path. Okay, I'll do that. Yeah. So I took a very different path, right? So I feel like the opportunity cost for folks like ourselves can be very high, right? So as a full disclosure, I have a law degree from Oct3, I have all the qualifications, and yet I gave that all up to be an entrepreneur. And why did I do that? And I feel this is very personal. I want to share it with you. I feel that Singaporeans have a general calibration for risk aversion, which is a little bit too high, right? And it's history, because somebody who started the country or the company said, you don't have to take any risk. I will take the risk for yourselves. At that point, Singapore was much smaller. Today, I feel like the only people who don't realize that we're an influential country can sometimes be Singaporeans. The rest of the world think we're quite a special place. The last 2 weeks did not show you that. And yet, our risk aversion seems to be back in the 80s and the 90s, and we have to take more risk. In fact, if we don't take risk, that possibly is the riskiest thing to do. We can afford to do it, we're expected to do it globally, so by darn sure we better do it. So I became an entrepreneur. I was successful enough to exit my company, so I have testimony to that. And I took whatever proceeds I had and I started a VC fund, because over the next 10 years, I try to replicate as many people as possible. And so the people that are here, who are going to present, are also people who I think we try our best to support. Some I say, can you take my money? And some say yes, some say no. But I think most famously, I like to just say that I'm so proud that I backed Viola back in the day, and Dion's here. And this is just one of many success cases that we can do as Singaporeans, now that we have the resources and the gumption and the intelligence. But we just need to amp up the risk. We just need to change our mindset. So the panel here will talk about the crazy nature upon which you start from a piece of paper and you get to like, Min Liang, how many people do you have in your organization now? Like, he doesn't even know, right? And how does that do that? So I'm looking forward to the panel. I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Hien, for sharing your story so generously. We'll now move into our panel discussion. So let's give a round of applause to welcome Tan Min Liang, Chang Wen, Dione Song, and Ben Paul, our moderator, to get the panel started.
So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to From Idea to Impact, Transforming Visions to Reality. This is an event organized by the Reflections Business Network. My name is Ben Paul. I am a journalist, but the really important information about me is that I was part of the RI class of 1985 and the RJC class of 87. So the idea behind today's event is for members of the RBN to interact with our panelists and hear their personal stories about what motivated them to get into the businesses that they're in, overcoming the challenges that they encountered, and what impact they would ultimately like to have on the world. So let me just introduce them very quickly. And they're all members, they're all Raffles alumni, I'm told. First off, Tan Min Liang, CEO and co-founder of Razer. The far end, Chang Wen, who's the co-founder and CEO of NinjaVan. Last but not least, in the middle, Dione Song, who is the CEO of Bonito. I'm going to try to set the tone by asking the panelists a couple of questions. And then after about 20 minutes of that, we'll take some questions from the audience. And okay, so on the questions, if you look at the slide, there's a QR code in the corner. If you use your phone, that will lead you to a page where you can type in your question. And then at the appropriate time, we'll look at them and get them to answer. Okay, so let's get started. Let's start with Min Liang, because we are here at the Razer HQ today. Just following on from what Hien was saying, when I interview first generation entrepreneurs from my father's generation, their story usually has to do with necessity. They got into business out of necessity. But you had a potentially lucrative professional career ahead of you. I mean, what motivated you to trade that in for entrepreneurship?
Sure. Well, first up, thank you very much for coming over. I think we expected a turnout. We didn't expect such a big turnout, which is good. I think what motivated me, I don't spend a lot of time thinking through many of my decisions. I'll be very candid. A lot of it is on the fly, off the cuff, and even till today, I don't really think much about it. It was fun, still fun. If it's entertaining, I continue to do it. I think that's really what motivates me all the time. I just look for entertaining, interesting things that we can change, make an impact. I just added the make an impact part because I think it sounds like it should be something I say. But fundamentally, we look at things that we can move the needle, change things along the way, mold it in the way that we think it should be, and then we just make it happen.
Well, just to follow from that, what was the opportunity that you saw in the gaming field that made you think, I can make something of this?
Well, for what it's worth, when we first started out, we really designed and made the world's first gaming mouse. But back then it was not a business. Even till today, I don't really see it as a business per se for us, right? We wanted to create something for gamers, for ourselves. I've always been a big gamer. I would be spending most of my time being a gamer at this point of time. if I weren't still in the office. And it's constantly looking what would serve us well as gamers, and we created the first gaming model. It wasn't meant to be a business at all. We didn't do any financial analysis. We didn't do any real considerations of what was going on. And we realized that, hey, people wanted it. Then, of course, when we went from the gaming mouse to hardware, to software, to services, it was always with this view that what would we like for ourselves as gamers? Now, for what it's worth, I think I'll be horrible in terms of trying to sell like women's clothing and things like that. I would never go in that direction. But for gaming products, I mean, we know what gamers want, and we just continue to design for them.
Okay, thank you. That's an interesting answer. Let me just go on to Chang Wen at the end. Again, you had a professional career ahead of you, and unlike Min, I take it wasn't passion, because you had more than one business before you settled on NinjaVan. So can you tell me what motivated you to try?
Oh, sure. So back to your point on it definitely wasn't a passion. I guess you're right. So someone was asking me today, who's my customer? I think that's a very sad fact about our business. Everyone's kind of our stakeholder. No one really wants to pay us, and no one's really happy. Right? Because you think about it, we have a lot of drivers, we have a lot of shippers, we have the platforms which squeeze us to nothing, and we have a lot of customers who expect their parcels to be on time until it isn't. So technically everyone has a right to be angry with us, and everyone expects us to do it, but they never thank us for it. So I can assure you, this was not born out of passion. It most definitely wasn't. So I think the question isn't really what motivated me or inspired me to start this. I think the question really to me was, why not? And I think thinking back, what probably is quite important is the concept of reversibility. So I think I still believe strongly in that concept, which is you should ask yourself, why not? Is it reversible? Sure, I had a great career, but so what? I could always go back to it. I mean, it's not like if I were destitute and I needed money, I would never have done this. I would have stayed somewhere with a safe income. But I knew that I probably had the right educational qualifications, the right job qualifications, that if I bombed it, I could go back in a year. So it wasn't so much on why this or why that, it was why not.
So you had a safety net, is what you're saying?
100% safety net.
Okay.
And that's important. And I think the next one really was more, as Reflesians, I think we generally suffer from a trait called intellectual arrogance. And we believe that we think that the problem is easy and it's solvable and it's not a problem at all. And hence we are very willing to jump into it and believe that we will triumph above all. And I think that is both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because if I didn't have that, I would never have started the business. It's a bad thing because I'm paying for it now. So I guess it cuts both ways, but I think those two sum up why I started the business.
Okay, let's bring Dione Song into this. Again, you started out with a career in finance. It's quite a traditional route. And then you decided that e-commerce was the place to be, the place to build your career. I mean, what was the thinking there?
Yeah, so I think maybe just a bit of context for everyone, right? I mean, versus Chang Wen and Min Liang, I didn't start with Bonito, right? Violas in the audience here. She's one of our co-founders. But I joined LB, right, as the first C-level hire. But I think back then my career, honestly, I was 1 year in back then in finance, right? So trade-offs there, when you're making such trade-off and decisions at such an early stage, it's not really that much. You know, I think I did finance for a bit, was doing internships right in different banks. I guess maybe as sort of a really bad student usually, and you see the principal here. I was a really bad student, right? I think back then, right, in humanities and all of that, right? Honestly, I think it wasn't really, going for, maybe I should have been going for more classes and so on, just really paying attention as well, right? I was always a rebel. And I think I found that, in a setup like this, I felt like a cock in, really a cock in the wheel, right? And couldn't really drive maximum impact and drive maximum change. And of course, I was quite impatient. Then I decided, hey, why not, right? I think back then, Grab was still my taxi, right? I was starting out. E-commerce was just starting. Rocket Internet was just launching as well. I met another actually disgruntled ex-Reflesian who left McKinsey back then. And I still remember we were having coffee in Holland Village and hey, there's this wonderful land called Rocket Internet where they hire all these unqualified ex-consultants and bankers who want to do something different with their career. Why don't you come just try it, right? And join the tech startup scene. So that's actually how I started my career in tech. So really, honestly, by chance, right? I joined Rocket Internet. I was meant to join a payment startup. Back then, it was called Pay11. It was meant to be a copy of Square. 4 days into my job, they basically emailed me and told me, hey, there's no more job for you because it's not launching anymore. And there was an issue of a prototype, right? So I think lesson one, right? I think you learned as well, even in a startup and a well-backed startup, that there is always risk, of course. But I then decided, okay, then you asked me, would you want to join Zalora or Foodpanda? Honestly, didn't think too much about it, and I was like, okay, I think Zalora sounds fun. Didn't appreciate Foodpanda's branding back then. So that was actually how I started in Zalora, so totally honestly by chance. I guess they thought I was from banking and finance. I threw me in the analytics and website team, figured I would be good with numbers. So I did that for a bit, and then started my career. So honestly by chance, right? I think, and after starting in that, I realized that, hey, I think I really sort of love being in a startup world where it's super fast-paced, you can make changes really quickly, and you can just drive change, right? And of course, I think it's a group of young, ambitious, very hungry people. I was honestly ending up doing IB hours with a third of the pay. So that was the first 4 years, right? But honestly, didn't question it. I think I genuinely enjoyed it. And I found that I was building a lot more skills, right? When it came to leadership, especially leadership, people management, right? Team management, and at such a young age also, you think about trade-offs, right? I think no other bigger MNC would have given me that opportunity at that point in time. And to me, I guess that was valuable.
So it suited the personality of a rebel, is what you're saying, I guess.
I guess in a way, yes. I guess where you can break the rules, or rather you can define the rules for yourself.
Okay.
Right? I think was what I liked.
Okay, but you must have seen a real opportunity in it. I mean, can I ask you what Love Bonito does differently from other online retailers? I mean, what is the competitive advantage?
Yeah, of course. So, I think we pride ourselves with being a very, very purpose-driven, right, women's wear brand, where it's really all about thoughtful clothing, right, and thoughtful fashion for women. I think fashion historically, for women especially, has been a very disempowering space and category, right? It was all about looking great, but not really about comfort, form, function, versus, let's say, maybe a menswear category or activewear. Well, Tian is our Series A, B investor, you see, so I better explain it well.
Go on.
Well, Tian can add on why he invested in us back then. But really, it's around being thoughtful, right? I think we talk about, hey, I think end of the day, we're really about ready to live, not just ready to wear, and I think that defines the entire space and really our mission as a brand, right? Where it's really clothing that takes you through your daily lives, right? Your daily hustle. With very thoughtful elements, whether it's padded tops. We were known as the first brand also that started just infusing even pockets in every single skirt, dresses, and all that, right? Because why can't women have that functionality, right, that men have when it comes to their category and their clothing, right? But of course, still look great, still look sexy, still look elegant, right? Still look classy in what you're wearing. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to stay with Dione as we get onto the topic of expanding startups and turning them into big businesses. So before we proceed, there's a slide. Can we have the next slide? We thought it would be a good idea to do an audience poll of what the biggest challenge is in an entrepreneur's journey. I mean, obviously it's different for different kinds of businesses, but there's a QR code in the corner. If you could use your phone and just vote for one of those categories. Is it raising capital? Is it dealing with regulations? Finding the right people? Scaling the operations or managing competition? And then we'll see what everyone thinks. So while they do that, while they vote, Dione, can you talk to us a little bit about your experience in scaling up operations at LB? I mean, what were you aiming for when you got there? I mean, what did you think needed to be done?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it depends maybe when you're asking these questions as well. I would say I think 6, maybe 7 years ago also when we thought about expansion, right? Everyone was just all investors were like, hey, go to the biggest, where has the biggest TAM? Please go there, right? And think about it that way, right? Is it Indonesia, for example, right? All these different markets. But I think when it comes to a product like ours, right, where it's consumer, right, and we're really producing also clothing, and depending on the environment as well, right, depending on also how much capital and funding you have as well. It's really about scaling very efficiently, right? So we like to think about it as where can we identify also market to product fit, right? Firstly, being just really clear about who we are as a brand, right? What is our unique value proposition, right? And to your question as well, how do we really truly differentiate, right, versus our competitors? Because fashion, it's a very crazy space, and there are just so many brands, international or regional, and so many brands have also come and gone, right? And for us, the differentiation as well has also been in terms of the audience, right, really speaking to also the Asian woman. So when it comes to proportions, right, sizing, fit, today as well, what's very meaningful representation, that's where we really differentiate, right? And we're really clear around who this audience is, right? And then finding markets that fit this, right, so that we can expand very efficiently versus changing up our entire business line, right, for every single market that we're expanding into, because hyper-localization actually is pretty expensive, right, and gets really complex as well.
Okay, so I'm just looking at the poll behind us. Seems like talent and hiring and scaling are the two biggest challenges. I mean, let's go back to Min now. Scaling and hiring people. You know, there was a question that we were getting questions even before this event. So I'll ask you one of them that came from, I think, a young member of the RBN. How do you foster a culture of continuous innovation despite having success in existing products? Because that's where the growth comes from, I think is the point of the question. So in order to grow the company, what does it take to add to the success that you already have?
Sure. So I guess I see things a little differently from, like breaking down these challenges and stuff like that. I think we look at things from a very macro perspective, right? And as we look at the objectives that we want to get to, and to me, it's rather than to break it down to geographical expansion or product expansion, so on and so forth, we really have a single vision or a goal, and then we just try to ensure that we bend everything, use our will to bend everything, whether it's people, whether it's strategy, or whatever resources we have in place to make the vision a reality. And it's this constant thing. It's everything. It's scaling, it's talent, it's people, it's port strike, that comes up yesterday. Every single aspect, operations. So we go really deep into every single detail, getting the best people, I think, in place. And to this end, we've got quite a number of refusions in Razer. Sandra, for example, which I had no idea was a refusion, but she looks like a refusion, which is good. But I work very, and that's maybe this is because it's relevant for RBN. We've got other, refusions that I've worked with for a long time. Our chief strategy officer, even in the various aspects of the business that I do. Brian runs our real estate stuff on a personal level. My family office CIO is also from RI at the same time. And I think on this note, finding the right people and being able to work with them and being able to trust in terms of execution is very important. I would say that these are things that we do see it's important, but on a much broader level, as we delve deep, it's every single aspect, and that consumes all the time, right? From the very waking moment, you see how I bend this entire thing of reality to say, if we're going to own this, we will own it, and nothing else matters. And we just wipe out everything that comes in the way, step by step, and we just chip away at it and get to that point.
I mean, if you could put some detail on that. I mean, if you look at your products, a mouse, for example. I mean, what does it do? What does it take to create a better mouse?
And I could go into great detail, right to the last, whether it's a label on the product or the packaging, or that's 1 pixel off, etc. It's constant and every single day. So I get team members who come from other companies and they say, oh, we didn't expect this level of detail, but we expect this level of detail from every single human being in the company. And there is no exception. And that's difficult because most human beings do not want to go into that level of detail. And it's painful. So we extract that, we go down, and we focus every single aspect, whether it's fundraising, whether it's competition, whether it's scaling, whether it's legal documents that come through along the way. But I think when you run when you're part of a startup or when you're part of an organization, when you're part of a company like Razer, that is what we expect of every single person in the company, which is painful, but pain is good.
Chang Wen,
Yeah.
can you jump in here? Talent, hiring, and scaling seem to be the most important things in the minds of people here. How do you think about building scale at NinjaVan? Is it about, did you expand geographically? Is it about serving different kinds of businesses?
I think the first part about scale comes from product market fit, just understanding what the market needs, making sure you have the right product. And I'm sure that's a challenge in itself. But every company is different in their challenges. I would say, for me, the biggest challenge is competition. Because the honest truth here is that for everything else, it's kind of within your control. Competition is out of your control. But it depends on which market you're in, what industry you're in. For us, it is technically an oligopolistic market. There are huge barriers to entry. You want to compete with us, hire 50,000 people first. That's the nature of competition. But if competition becomes irrational, then it is also very difficult for us because we are more a B2B company than a B2C company. So for us, competition is something which is out of our control. We can do everything we want. We could have single vision, we could be determined, we could work the hardest. But if someone comes in with unlimited capital and just pushes the market, it's very difficult to do anything. So to me, at least, that's the biggest challenge for competition.
So let me ask you this. I mean, when I buy something online and I look at the delivery tracker, sometimes it's NinjaVan, sometimes it's DHL. I mean, can I ask you, what does NinjaVan do better than those competitors?
So I guess it depends who our competitors are. If it's DHL, FedEx, I would say we do everything better than them.
Modest. Okay.
We have better trackers, we are more efficient, we have much more scale, we are faster. That's easy. But I think what you are seeing as competition in the region are not really these foreign companies. It is the Chinese companies which are in here, who work harder than you, they have 10 times more capital than you, they execute better than you, and in almost every aspect it is very difficult to compete. So the way we compete is we try to find a middle ground, where we are more international, we move into different segments, and we don't just compete on price necessarily. But all that said, it's easier said than done because it really still is a scale business. So technically scaling is the business because without scale you have no business. That is the network game we have to build. And truth be told, those were the best years of my life. Moving to every country, living in there, building up the scale. I still recall every market we opened, we would go to the highest bar in the capital cities and we would have a drink, we look down and we say that one day every square inch will be covered by us. And that's quite motivating. So looking forward, looking up, that's always fun. But that comes to an end. It becomes looking sideways, looking behind you, and when you feel like you don't really have control anymore, and I think that's when it gets really frustrating.
Okay, there were a few questions before this event took place. So I'm going to ask you one of them. What was the turning point when you realized your company could grow significantly? What was it that you saw? What happened that made you realize, okay, this is going to work?
When Rachel from Love Bonito gave me her first bag of parcels. So, the honest truth is, we started with no credential. Nobody believed that we knew anything. Again, I said that was intellectual arrogance, thinking that we could solve the problem. But it's also very good salesmanship, convincing other people that we could solve the problem. But that built on itself. After Love Bonito, we got Charles and Keith by talking with Keith. And with those two names, we convinced more people to join the bandwagon. And after a while, you do build a certain credibility. So the honest truth is, I think that part of the business was not very difficult. I don't think we necessarily came into a market and innovated or had a really fantastic product which people love, like Razer or Love Bonito. We just came up with a less shitty product. That's the honest truth. What was growing was e-commerce, which required logistics. We were just the least shitty ones out of everyone. We have a product which is angst minimization, not happiness maximization. It's a very different product.
This is so interesting. Well, I can't help asking, where do you go from here? I mean, you've expanded geographically. Is it a case of serving different kinds of businesses? I ask because you've gone into cold chain transport and so on.
So again, back to price competition and a never-ending downward spiral on pricing. I think that's happening in the e-commerce world. And because e-commerce is about angst minimization, it is very easy to reach that minimum threshold. Just get it done. You know, you don't have to have a nice tracker. You don't really have to be on time. You just need to make sure that somehow or another it ends up on the doorstep. And that's really not a very high bar. I mean, getting that scale and the cost efficiencies, that's a high bar. But if you're willing to pour tons of billions and billions of dollars in, you will eventually get that. There won't be many people who will do it, but someone will and someone will get that. When we looked at the B2B business, it is quite different. It becomes more about happiness maximization. It is about making sure that the entire business can operate because you cost 1% of the revenue, but they need you to be like clockwork. And that's when they start paying you, and they don't just go for the cheapest price provider. And I think the best example is cold chain. I think a lot of us here would be really afraid if you ordered something, you ordered fish, you ordered steak, and somehow or another it gets thrown in your doorstep and you never know when it's that. You will not accept that. Restaurants will not accept cold chain, which comes as and when they want to, and they cannot operate their business. And I think understanding those segments where people care about your business, where it stops becoming about angst minimization, being about happiness maximization, being about a core part of your business, but not costing a ton of it. I think that is the sweet spot for us. Unfortunately, e-commerce logistics is 10% of GMV, and that's a large amount, which means that you have to squeeze that as low as possible.
Okay, I think one of the things that everyone here would like to hear from all three of you is your personal stories about overcoming roadblocks. Just before this session started, there were three young men, I think they're still here, who are members of the entrepreneurship club at RI. And I think what they would like to hear is your personal stories of your trials and tribulations and how you overcame them. So I'll ask it this way. If you had to give your younger self advice, what would it be in overcoming challenges? Min, you're our host. You're going to start.
Sure. Again, I really don't look at trials and tribulations. I've got no recollections of. I tend not to look back at all. I just keep looking forward. I don't really care what has happened before. I just make the best of whatever I've got at any point of time. I don't do well with advice. So, if I listen to myself, I would just ignore me, most of the time. I think, that's the case. I always like to use an analogy of a gamer's mindset of looking at the next challenge. It's a fun thing, you go after it, and then rinse and repeat all the time, right? So I really take that as a daily kind of challenge. I enjoy it. Whenever I get into trouble, it's usually because we've tried to push the needle on a little bit of a new category or a new business. And we kind of enjoy it. It's this little bit of a sadomasochistic way of going like, okay, if we don't rock the boat, then we wouldn't be getting in trouble. And then if we weren't getting in trouble, we would be probably dying as a business. So we constantly keep looking for these new challenges to go after. The bigger the challenge, the better. Mega challenges are even more fun as we go after it. And I don't see, I've not really thought of anything as in the business sense, right, as a challenge.
Okay, so just keep moving forward, I guess is the advice.
Yeah.
Trail of destruction behind you, but just keep going.
Who cares?
Dione.
I mean, I think it's a similar strand actually. I think every challenge gives an opportunity, right? So I think it's always fun, it's always interesting, right? There's always sort of something that you're learning. And when you look at, honestly, when you're looking back, when you're in something and you're in a difficult situation, for sure, sometimes it feels painful. But honestly, I think for life, I think most decisions, number one, I feel are two-way doors, right? I think back to what Chang Wen shared as well. I think most things are actually reversible. Most decisions in life, actually. And a lot of times when you're looking back actually to everything that you've done in the past, right, you realize that none of those painful memories actually you really remember anymore, right? I think at least for me. I mean, I love art, right? I think there's this quote by David Shrigley, right, that says, hey, when life gives you a lemon, right, you eat the lemon and the skin and all of it, right? And then you find the joy in it, right, to be honest. So yeah, I think that would be really the approach.
Okay, that's great. I mean, if I were to add to that, I think what all of you have said before is that being Raffles alumni, you already had a head start in life and you had something to fall back on.
But that's true. I think maybe Hian also put it right just now. I guess he says, I mean, and maybe Chang Wen said that as well, right? I think maybe we're intellectually also a little bit cocky, so we think we can achieve and bulldoze through all the different challenges. So maybe there's a little bit of that as well, right? That we need to
However you
calibrate
get
a little bit more.
Chang Wen,
Well,
overcoming
I don't know,
challenges.
man. I feel like I've had a lot of challenges. I feel like I've had a lot of sad moments. I tell you, doing shitty business, no choice. Excellent realization. But
So your advice to your younger self and to the younger gentlemen who are contemplating a life of entrepreneurship, what would you say to them?
it's very painful.
Oh, this is encouraging.
We got out of those challenges. There are ongoing challenges. And if I think back, it is very easy to get a bit too weighed down when you are facing challenges and you feel like the walls are closing in around you, you don't have many options left, you get really quite upset. But I think one of my strengths as well is I can always pick myself up. So generally, even at the bottom, you pick yourself up, you steady yourself, you try to find a solution. I think the key lesson I take away from looking at a lot of these challenges is most challenges can be overcome. Just stay calm, think about it, you get out of it. However, there are some challenges you cannot overcome. So I think my biggest mistake in the entrepreneurial journey is to try to overcome a challenge which today I feel is structurally insurmountable. What I should have done then is to just have taken a different path and not try to solve the challenge. Which is quite surprising. But if you ask me, this is probably my biggest lesson I would teach my younger self. Not every challenge can be solved. Sometimes turn around and go a different path. Don't challenge it.
Okay, well that's very profound, very good advice. Very good advice. So,
What would you have done, right?
as it happens, we've reached the point for audience questions. So.
Wow, very open sharing now.
Usually when it's too late.
I mean, our biggest challenge was we want to be the biggest e-commerce logistics provider. Yeah? And for a while we were. Then came the Chinese with 10 figures behind them. And to me, that was a challenge to be solved. Come, let's fight, heads up, let's go. What I should have done was to really rationalize the challenge in front of me and realize that this is a fight I can never win. Take a different path. Go into B2B, go into cold chain, use e-commerce as a base, but don't go heads up. Right? And to me, that's one of the biggest lessons I think I'll take away. Not every fight can be won. And sometimes getting that fight might end up killing you. So at least I can say that now I'm not dead. But thank God. But I think we wasted too long fighting a fight we should never have fought.
Okay, so we are actually at the audience questions segment. There are some questions already in. I have to say, Min Liang, a lot of them are directed at you. I'm not quite sure why, and some of them are a little bit out there. I'll read you one. You don't have to answer it, but if your company had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would it be? And how many awkward dance moves would you have to bust out to keep your team inspired? You don't have to.
Sure. I don't think about these things all the time. Maybe I do.
But there is another question here that is directed at you, but maybe the others should also jump in. What was the most outrageous idea someone pitched to you that you almost said yes to, but ultimately had to turn down because it was just too wild? So, outrageous idea. And perhaps if you could address the subtext of the question, which is that, you know, organizations like Razer and LB and NinjaVan, the perception seems to be that these are places that embrace new ideas, new ways of doing things, alternative ways of solving problems, and so on.
Sure. Something I really believe in is that if anyone's going to be a good business person, the person's got to have an incredibly open mind. And I realize it's very, very hard to have a very open mind in general. It's just a lot of people have preconceived biases. You can't do this, you shouldn't do that, so on and so forth. I try not to verbalize this too much because, it's very hard to come with an idea where I'm shocked at or where I find outrageous. Because I generally take everything very seriously. Anyone comes up with a complete weird-ass idea or something like that, I like to think about it, no matter how outrageous it might seem.
What was that?
What is the most outrageous thing your fan has ever done? When other people say that's outrageous, although you say like this, no. Like, didn't somebody tattoo themselves?
Yeah, that's weird, but it's not outrageous. Yeah, I mean, there's this guy who tattooed my face on himself. I thought that was kind of weird, but I wouldn't think it's outrageous. But I'm just saying, it's the and keeping a very open mind is really difficult. There are lines that most people have in general, but some business ideas I find really interesting. I can't even talk about it because there'll be a lot of disapproval and things like that. There are business ideas that I thought were entertaining, but I didn't go into because I thought my parents would disapprove of it, that kind of thing. But I would think through it because, and I've realized this, that most of the people I know don't necessarily have a very open mind. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just the reality of it, right? It's just the pure reality of it. What's the most outrageous stuff that you guys have done?
Dion, most outrageous,
Truth or dare kind of
most
session, right?
outrageous suggestion.
But I guess it was more a hackathon, right? So every few years. Well, we're not doing it now. I guess we don't have enough funding to try more outrageously expensive stuff. But back then, I guess, in brighter times, a couple of years ago, I guess we always run like these hackathons, right? Every time we go into like strategy planning and all of that. And I think for us, the vision really for Love Bonito is, I think we want to become the ecosystem, right, for Asian women, but really stand for also everything female, right, or everything also Asian-centric. I think we were brainstorming like, hey, I think it would be pretty cool if we have a sort of like horoscope feng shui app or something like that, right, where women love, I think, playing with all these different horoscopes. It reads you all your, daily tips and hacks and everything, and maybe we start collecting data, right? Everyone loves data. We start collecting that, understand, right? I think our customers better, and then suddenly start influencing, right, their shopping preferences and so on. Yeah, maybe we should be trying something like that. I guess those were some ideas, in the past. That was actually interesting, right? I think it's more about how do we then also eventually step out, right, beyond our category, right, become a sort of like lifestyle and a hub as well, right, to really drive, right, more purchases also, right, but really, of course, serve the Asian female customer through all of the different line needs. Yeah.
How about men's line?
I know, Roger, but not so outrageous lah. But yeah. But we have a hashtag going on. We have a hashtag going on. Yeah, love Bonito. Oh yeah. So you've been thinking about that actually, right? I mean, just to share. Obviously, I think now like macro and retail, it's a little bit soft, right? I think we have a bit more inventory. We started noticing that hey, it's quite interesting. A lot of like some influencers in Philippines, their boyfriends and husbands have started sporting like Love Bonito. And it's a thing, right? I guess, and a lot of fashion stuff when it comes to blazers, shirts. Actually, it's unisex anyway, right? You can really wear it if you size up. Tian can probably wear an XL blazer. Yeah, I scolded him. I was like, why are you not in LB today? You should be totally dressed it to toe in LB. I think that would be interesting. We were thinking like maybe we should start some ads, right? With guys wearing LB. It drives them to a different website, but with male models spotting us, totally different branding, and just see how it sticks. Because it could actually work, right? And the men actually in Love Bonito actually do wear our stuff. I mean, yeah. Most of them are also queer, but they also do wear our stuff, right? And it fits quite well, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're going in an interesting new direction.
Don't know if my shareholder would approve, but yeah.
It sounds like
We
you already
haven't
made an
discussed it
announcement here. But anyway. Chang Wen, most outrageous idea that you had to say no to?
I know I've had the most time to think about it, but I honestly do not know. I honestly think what Min Liang says is right. I genuinely quite an open mind, so nothing really sounds that outrageous, it just sounds stupid. Because that's logic. It's not outrageous, it's just dumb, right? So, to be frank, I really cannot recall anything, sorry.
Okay, I'm just conscious of the time. I was told that there's a hard stop at 8:30. So I'm just going to ask one last round of questions to everyone, which is to tie up the whole thing about creating a wider impact with your enterprise. So let me ask it this way. If everything you could possibly want your organization to achieve is achieved in the next 10 years, what would your company look like and what would the world look like? Min.
I feel like many of these questions are not really tailored to me because it's very introspective and I'm not a very introspective person, at all. I don't think that much. I mean, it's like every day is day one for me. It's like, is this constant? There's a huge opportunity ahead of us and we're forging ahead, whether it's 1,000 people, 2,000 people, whatever it is. We just drive toward it and there's a single mind and we really shift the entire organization to go after it. I just feel every day we've barely gotten started. We really feel we've barely gotten started. We are, we've got as much energy today as we did when we first started. Sometimes, of course, it's a bit xian, you've got this kind of things happening, that, whatever it is. But I would say 9 times out of 10 days, it's always a constant, drive to get to something bigger. And what's fun is that what used to be big is now small. Like today, like a day's revenue is equivalent to a year's revenue for us back in the day. But then now we're going to drive to, can we get to a day's revenue in a couple of years, where it's a year's revenue for us today. And that's what we look at. I think in terms of impact, don't get me wrong, I think we look at different ways that we can impact, and we get impact things around the world, and we tend to be also very focused. So if there's one thing about us at Razer, it's just laser focus all the time, where even for our CSR and stuff like that, I said, look, there are many things that we can do, but the environment is important to us, it's important to our constituents, our gamers and stuff like that. So that's why we drive everything across two also at the same time. Because we don't think we're good at many different things. We just want to be great at one thing, truly phenomenal at one thing, and we just drive at it. So in the case of sustainability and environment, we were doing it way before this whole ESG thing has been there. So we do things like, how do we get our tech involved? How do we do our hardware design involved in respect of that? So we've got climate tech, things like that sprout up. Other interesting things that have come through, and we've realized that we've built other large companies, even within the company, is that, we focus on a single thing. So maybe case in point. We were very focused on game payments, all right? And we are one of the biggest kind of like platforms for monetizing for games out there. But as an extension of that, we started doing payment processing and stuff like that, which Li Ming runs at this point of time, and Few, which is a payment processor for us. Now it's one of the biggest kind of payment processors in the region, right? It didn't start from an intention to get there, but because of the focus of where we want to get to, it just spawns out these many interesting things that have come through. And that's what we continue to do.
Okay, that's a consistent answer. You're a here and now kind of guy, and you're going to keep going. I'll go to Chang Wen first, and then Dione can have the last word.
Well, in terms of impact, we are everywhere in Southeast Asia. We have a lot of greenhouse emissions, so we care about sustainability. We use electric vehicles. We take care of communities, but the community part's more true. We try to take care of our drivers. We've got 70,000 around Southeast Asia. So we do take a more humane approach towards our employees, despite them being really the main cost item of our business. So I think that is something we do care a lot about, and during COVID, I think that's when it really shone through. But apart from these, I would say things we should do. I sometimes do tell my team and tell them that it's very important to know that businesses can outlive themselves. you should not try to build a business bigger than it could be. Because past a certain point, it is value destructive. There's a certain opportunity for a business. Reach that level, and then move on. Build another business, do something else. Don't keep building things on top of a core. Because after a while, you might run out of runway, and you're just value destructive there. You're just wasting resources. It's not an optimal deployment of resources. So I think that is something which took us some getting used to. Be very clear where your competitive advantage is, maximize it, be laser focused, but don't get distracted and start thinking that because you have a big core, you can build a lot of things around it, because ultimately it becomes wasteful. And if you really think it's another opportunity, go and do another business. So, I know in terms of vision, I think there's a lot to be done in logistics, but I think we also have to be very mindful that there's only that much to be done as well.
Okay, philosophical answer. Dione.
Sorry, what's your question again?
If everything that you could possibly want LB to achieve in the next 10 years is achieved, what would the company look like, and what would the world look like?
I think mine's actually very simple. I mean, I really hope that, I think we do good, right, in the process of everything that we're building. I don't think, honestly, that many companies and organizations, especially maybe in our space, are always doing good, right? Whether it's developing a good product, right, that is, of course, having a net positive impact also to the supply chain, for example, right? Producing something good, I guess, and treating still your people, right, in a fair and good way as well through that process. I mean, I hope for us to be, I think, doing good business, right? Doing good, kind business, right? That is compassionate, that is empathetic to our teams, right, and to our value chain. And I think maybe sometimes, especially when it comes to tough times, sometimes it's tough, right? I think you're making certain decisions, you're making certain trade-offs, right? But I think if we hold ourselves, right, to that, to that moral, ethical sort of like high ground as well, I think that's important, right? I think, and I think that's the impact that we want to leave, right?
Okay, thank you for that. So let's end the session here. It's almost 8:30. Let me just remind everyone that you can stay in touch with the RBN, including the panelists here today, by downloading the Glue Up app and using that to stay in touch. So please download the app. Thank you to Min Liang, Dione, and Chang Wen for being here today and taking our questions.